You're listening to Unmuted Love. Hi there, I'm C. Ushelman, and with 35 years as a marriage and family therapist and 25 years as a parent of 2 children I brought home from the foster care system, I want to welcome you here to Unmuted Love Podcast, the one place where nothing is off limits to say out loud about parenting children from difficult beginnings.
Stop for a minute, stop and breathe for a minute. Long it over your head, try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute, who you wanna be for a minute. Don't get over your head, you're like everyone else, aren't you?
Sometimes it's real sweet around here, and sometimes it ain't so pretty, because this is 100% Unmuted Love. So let's go.
You'll be just
Hi parents, welcome back. So glad you made it. Hey, let's just start with a great big breath, right? Remember how it goes? It's breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. And now blow it out your mouth for 4 counts. Let's try that again. One more time. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. And now out your mouth, 4 counts. Nice. So it's always good to get a little regulation. Try to get that every hour if you can. Now, everybody says all the time, hey, I breathe all the time, I'm fine. Well, guess what? There's a certain kind of breathing for regulation, and we just did it. So if you could do that once an hour, you would go a long way toward helping yourself be a little more regulated in your life with children from difficult beginnings. And that's what we're here doing, right? Is trying to make our lives a little more easy and also help be a healing factor in the lives of our children who come to us already harmed, already experiencing the world in an upregulated way. And so if taking a breath every hour is all it takes, well, okay, yeah, no, it's way more than that. But that helps a lot for you, all the things that you have to remember in order to be a really regulated parent for children from difficult beginnings. So last week we talked about that little thing between your ears called how you think and how that impacts how you parent your children. So I wanted to pick up there. I'll remind you that the topic last week was, do children deserve respect? And I know that all of you said, of course they do. But let me just tell you what respect probably really means. In practice, it means children having the right, the freedom, and the agency to think, feel, believe, speak, and act on their own behalf. That's what empowerment means. And we all want empowered adult children, and adult children get empowered in childhood. That's how that works. If you're empowered in childhood, you become an empowered adult. So we are their cornerstones. We're the imprint. We're the place it starts. And so we have to really be asking ourselves, do we really mean it? So I wanted to just take us through a little bit of an exercise today, picking up where we left off last time. I was asking you what kinds of things that you think about children. Children should be, I don't know, seen and not heard, for example. That's how I was raised. Or children should go outside and play and leave parents alone. Also how I was raised. So those thoughts about how children should be and how parents should be go a long way toward dictating how we experience our children and what we expect of them. But there's a deeper way of looking at it too. For example, how we think when our children are misbehaving. Let's see, for example, harming someone else, stealing something, lying, manipulating, maybe just having early sex, maybe not being very likable, being selfish, bossy, mean, or melting down a lot, right? We have something we tell ourselves about that. And so the exercise I'm going to ask you to do is just simply list your inner self-talk when confronted with, how you feel, exhausted by your children who are having a big fat behavior of some sort. What are your inner thoughts? What do you tell yourself about your child when that's happening? That will matter a lot for then what you do. So if you know that your inner thoughts are sometimes super dysregulated, then the very best thing you can do is come up with some good mantra for yourself like, hey, I need to stop, drop what I'm thinking, Don't speak. Take some big, fat, deep breaths with 4 counts in between each side of that triangle until I can find words that aren't so hurtful. So I'm saying this because what comes to mind is a session I had this week with a mother and a daughter, a young preteen and her mother. And the preteen was honestly telling her mom, "Yeah, I don't feel loved." And the mom was like, "What do you mean you don't feel loved? I'm doing this and that and the other for you all day long, every day, and you don't feel loved?" And she's like, "No, I don't, because of some of the things you've said to me." With that, the mom took a deep breath, turned toward her daughter, and said, "What kinds of things have I said to you that are making you think that I don't love you?" And then she says, "Well, you told me when I was around 5 years old that you wished I had never been born. You told me that you hate me sometimes. You've even told me that I'm a monster. And then one time when I told you I didn't love you, you told me I don't love you either. And those are the things that I think about when I think you don't love me. And you know what? That still happens." And mom turned toward her daughter, took a deep breath with tears in her eyes, and she said, "You're right. I did say all those things. I was so dysregulated so much of the time because I didn't know how to be a good parent to you. And I lost my mind and I said things I didn't mean. And I'm so sorry I said them to you. And that's all you can think of when you think about whether or not I love you, because I do love you." They looked in each other's eyes. They had that frank conversation and they had a meeting of the hearts right there. It's a big moment. It's not the end moment. It's not the last repair that's ever going to happen. And frankly, it's not the last time this mom is going to get dysregulated and say things she doesn't mean. But they have a blueprint for how to come back and make repair and to start over. Parents don't have to be perfect, but they do have to understand the importance of what they say to their children. So I really want you to be thinking about what you say inside your mind. Maybe it never comes out your lips. If you're lucky, it never comes out your lips. If you had a difficult childhood yourself, it's the first thing that comes off your lips, right? I know for sure that's was true for me. The first thing that would come out of my mouth when I was dysregulated at my child's dysregulated behavior was something that my mom had said to me. And my mom was completely mean with her words. And I swore that I would never talk to a child like that. And then when I get my kids, as soon as I'm dysregulated, out comes these mean words. So it took me a long time to understand what was going on. I couldn't hardly face myself. I had so much shame, right, about what I was saying. I knew I was saying things that wasn't okay. And I knew it was hurting my kids. And couldn't stop myself because I didn't understand it came from trauma from my own childhood. But I got a little help. I got a lot of understanding. I learned how to have self-compassion. And I went to work on my inner self talk so I could stop that behavior that was hurting my kids, but also hurting me. I felt so ashamed of myself, I couldn't even tell anybody it was happening. So, hey, no shame, no blame here. I've learned how to let go of that. And I want you to learn how to let go of that too. And the only way to really let go of it is to learn how to change it. So, first, know what it is you're saying. What are those mean things you're saying in your mind? And what are the mean things that you have actually said out loud? Now, I'm not saying run right to your child and make an apology. I'm not saying that at all, actually, because until you're regulated, until you're really doing your internal work, you're going to keep having those things fly out of your mouth and wounding your children over and over and over. The repairs will become meaningless. So I don't want you to just make meaningless repairs. Not that they're meaningless in the moment. I know you mean them in the moment. But if you accidentally get dysregulated in an hour from now and the same thing happens, then your children are not going to believe you or trust you. And so that felt safety piece that we're talking about all the time gets destroyed at the get-go. So I just really want to help you work on yourself first and work on your child's behavior second. Okay? So you first in all things, right? When I'm talking about putting yourself on the top of the pyramid where you take care of yourself first and your children second, which is so counterintuitive, right? We're all taught that our kids should come first all the time. But actually, the best way to put your children first is by thinking about yourself first and putting yourself on the top of the pyramid, your self-care, your wellness, your healing from trauma if you have it, so that you can assist your children better in their healing process, in growing up into the adults you want them to be. And also, facilitating less harm in the process. I mean, it's one thing for your kids to come to you already harmed from difficult beginnings, and then without realizing it, you adding a layer or two of harm yourself because you either don't know therapeutic parenting and you use traditional parenting, which turns out to be harmful, or you have your own harmed early childhood that comes right out of your mouth the second you get dysregulated. So this is really common. It's not unusual. You're not broken. I wasn't broken, but I was hurting my kids, and they have been harmed by my mouth. And so I had to learn how to rein that in and how to regulate. And that's what I'm here to do with you, is to help you learn that taking these deep breaths, as silly as they sound, if you take them often enough, over time, you actually regulate your entire autonomic nervous system. And that's the thing that's out of balance, right? If you come from a situation of trauma in or the early years of your childhood, then you probably have something called toxic stress too. So your children have it, but you have it too, which means when you get upset, you get dysregulated to the point where you can't think. And when you can't think, you can't do therapeutic parenting for sure. You can't even do traditional parenting in a way that's very, very healthy. So that's what I'm here to help you really get in touch with, is that it's not all about your child's big, fat, bewildering behavior, because I know that's there. But that's just there. That's who they are. That's how they come to you harmed. But what you aren't realizing is that you have some big fat behavior too. If you are yelling at your kids a lot, if you are dysregulated a lot, and if you say mean things. So if that's you, then this podcast is also for you, because we're all in this together and we are better together. It is impossible to get better if you're going it alone, day in and day out. If you are pretending everything's fine, but it's not, or if you aren't telling people your truth because you think they would think you were a horrible person, or if you are protecting your children from what people might think about them, then you are living in a vacuum. And in a vacuum, all things bad grow, right? Like mold. Everything grows when it's in the dark, right? Shame grows when it's in the dark. Negativity grows when it's in the dark. Relationships that are broken grow more broken in the dark. So let's shed some light on it. Let's start to understand how to regulate, and let's begin to understand what healing a child from difficult beginnings means, so that some of that big, baffling, bewildering behavior can begin to lessen over time. So one of the things is coming back to this notion that children deserve respect. And respect really just means they deserve a regulated parent. Because when you're regulated, then you can parent in a way that's respectful. It doesn't mean that you get walked all over. It doesn't mean that you don't set limits, or that you don't have boundaries, or that they get to do any old thing they want. That's not what it means. But what it means is, when in your parenting, you do it in a respectful way that doesn't cause more harm, that doesn't erode the felt safety further, that doesn't create more baffling behavior, because it is more punitive than it is healing. So parents, listen, you're not bad. If you find yourself yelling more of the time than you ever imagined possible, then it's okay. You are in a struggle with how to deal with regulation. And it's very simple, really. It's stopping. It's dropping your agenda for the moment and regulating. So if you have to write that down, I want you to do it. Stop, drop your agenda, and breathe. And don't speak. I used to put my hand over my mouth and tell myself inside my head, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak, until I could regulate. And that sounds ridiculous, but I also had little stickies all over the house that said, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak, because what would come out was this imprint from my childhood that I swore I wasn't going to say. So I need a reminder to just don't say anything until I could be calm. Of course, you get to get upset. You get to have your feelings, all of them. But dysregulated means, whoa, too big a feeling, right? Either so much feeling that you can't control your mind, you can't control your mouth because your mind is running wild, or too much feeling so that you just collapse into giving up and throwing in the towel, and then your kids get the feeling that you don't believe in them. Right. So there are lots of things that can happen in a dysregulated state. You can scream and yell, you can hit your children, you can break things. You can also just collapse and go to bed and give up on them and tell them, I don't care, go do what you want. Neither of those two extremes are good for your kids. So the middle ground is always going to be the better way. And the middle ground has a lot of flexibility in it. Yes, you can speak with a loud voice. Yes, you can say it like you mean it. Yes, you can Be gentle and kind in the face of upset. Yeah, you can do all of that. Everything you have is fine until it gets so far out of the window of tolerance. That's what it's called, the window of tolerance. You get so far outside that you're saying mean stuff, or you're throwing in the towel and saying, I don't care, I don't love you anyway. And you're just giving up. But you're giving up in such a way that it wounds that tender, fragile heart of that child that's already feeling like they're not particularly lovable in the first place. So, parents, consider this. Consider just simple things. Don't make this more complicated than it is. Start with a simple mantra. Stop. Drop your agenda for right now. That means if you're hurrying them out the door, that's the agenda. Stop that for right now. Just stop and take some breaths until you can say, oh, you're having trouble getting your shoes on, babe. Can I help you? Let me help you get your shoes on, right? Which is a completely different thing than I'm going to stuff your feet into these shoes if you don't put them on yourself. That's a different dysregulated statement, right? So stop. Drop your agenda for the moment. Breathe until you can come back to it like the loving parent you know you are. That's number one. Simple, simple mantra to regulate yourself first. 2, think about attunement. What is attunement? Attunement is that intersubjective connection between a parent and a child. Now, when you have a child from difficult beginnings, that attunement's rough. It's not easy to get attunement, right? That means where you both feel seen and heard at the same time. It's a kind of mind-body sensing of the other, knowing the rhythm, knowing the affect and the experience, and just being so connected that it's like you're one in that moment. It's like a dance. But our kids have a hard time with that dance. And so we have to really perfect the notion of attunement, which is something that most of us have hardwired, unless, of course, we had trauma in the early years. But we're mostly hardwired for attachment. When a baby cries, we tend to want to soothe it. When a baby's hungry, we tend to want to feed it. When a baby is making goo-goo eyes at you, we tend to want to make goo-goo eyes back, right? That's an attunement that we have easily with babies. But children and parents need that throughout their childhood. And that attunement sometimes gets lost in the big, baffling, difficult, bewildering behavior. I totally understand that. But here's some simple things. This week, I just want you to practice 2 things. Just that mantra, stop, drop your agenda, take a breath before you speak, right? Don't speak until you're regulated. Then with soft eyes, soft face, a regulated tone, nice rhythm, nice cadence, a volume that's easy to hear, and choosing words that are gentle. I want you to directly make requests of your children, right? Just requests. Please put your shoes on. We're going to leave in 5 minutes. I'd like for you to be dressed, right? This is the sound of moving a child along without yelling at them or threatening them or letting things come out of your mouth that last a lifetime in terms of whether they feel loved or they don't feel loved. So parents, you are so important to this. Now, what I'm talking about is so basic. Maybe it seems too basic to you to be really meaningful, but I promise you the basics are where it's at. Go back to the basics. Start over with attunement. Start over with what you're thinking between your ears and watch your own dysregulation. Your dysregulation is the most important thing. So you have to get a handle on your own regulation strategies. What will you do? Now, some parents do all kinds of things. Some people meditate, some people take walks, some people do this deep breathing, some people do yoga, some people do big exercising, right? There are lots of things you can do. There are also a whole lot of neuro hacks that you can do, which I can teach you down the road. So you can decide what you do that's regulating for you. But the problem with most parents is they don't do what they know. So I want you to really think this week, what am I going to do that I already know? How can I stick some regulation back in my life? Because, woo, there's too much yelling going on. Woo, there's too much meanness going on. And half of it's coming from me, the parent. Oh, I know. A lot of you have really regulated that. And so you're not doing that anymore. And that's cool. If you're not doing that anymore, then pat yourself on the back because you passed this class. Boom, 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 right? You're already here and you don't have to practice this so much. There's plenty of stuff along the way to practice, right? But in my opinion, most parents really haven't mastered the basics. So when we're talking about regulation and co-regulation, We need to put those at the top of our mastery list. We need to stop crazy studying new methods and interventions. Stop trying to find the best parenting strategy. Stop seeking help in all the right and all the wrong places. Just stop. You're the answer. You being regulated is the answer for healing yourself and your children, right? That is the answer. The basics are the answer. So I want you to go back to the basics and just make sure you're really tuned up in this arena before you move on to the next thing. All right, everybody, until next week, remember, your love matters. Hey parents, this is C. Get the help you need to end destructive and chaotic behavior in your home while parenting children from difficult beginnings. I know you need help, and the Love Plus parenting model actually works. I'm inviting you to work with me personally for 6 months in my virtual therapeutic parent program, and I guarantee you results or 100% of your investment back. How is that for a blue ribbon deal? I'm looking forward to working with you. See you on the inside.
Stop for a minute. Stop and breathe for a minute. Don't get over your head. Try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute. Who you want to be for a minute. Don't get over your head. You're like everyone else, aren't you? You could gain from being a bit nicer. Know when to talk and when to shut your mouth.
The Unmuted Love podcast is hosted by me, C. Eshelman, attachment and trauma specialist at the Attach Place in Sacramento, California. Our podcast producer is the amazing Saya Clark, and our theme song is Nicer by Houses on the Hill, licensed through Epidemic Sound. Thank you for being such loyal listeners here on Unmuted Love. I'll see you all next week.
You'll be just fine.